So this is another Nightmare Cup I participated in. It was in Marburg, and let's get right into it. So my first opponent, what I saw was that my Spiritomb had pretty good matchups against Satu, Raichu, Cladle and Toxicroak. So that was quite a must-have. Another one was Toxicroak myself, my only fighting type in this cup. So yeah, I needed that to counter his Umbreon in case he brings it. And it was also okay against Raichu and good against Muk, and yeah, another neutral matchup against his Toxicroak. And for the last spot I had a Lone Eradicate to cover Satu, Umbreon, once again Raichu, Muk, Claydol. It pretty much was good against 5 of his Pokemon, so yeah, I had to include that also. And I predicted him, or I guess he would start with his Alolan Raichu, since it's so versatile and easy to use and such a good lead. So I had my Spiritomb as a lead. He started off with Cladle, is another psychic type, so yeah, pretty good matchup for me. He switches into Umbreon. I immediately switch to my Toxicroak to hit him with my counters. He does a charge move. I thought it might be last resort and I didn't want to tank that first one, so I shield that one. And then I do my Mud Bomb. I mean, yeah, no reason to do my Sludge Bomb because I thought he might shield it. So now he does another foul play. I mean, in this case I was fine with tanking at last resort, but instead it was just a foul play. So yeah, I continuously do my Mud Bomb to finish him off. He goes into his Toxicroak, which was quite unusual. I would have predicted him to go for Cladle and kill my Toxicroak immediately, but okay. He had to shield my Mud Bomb there. And unfortunately for him, I switched into my Spiritomb, charge up to my Shadow Ball and fainted before he even gets to his Mud Bomb or Sludge Bomb. I mean, he should have done his Mud Bomb. He had the energy, but yeah, now he's forced into the our both leads, which was a good matchup for me, and I finished it off with my Shadow Ball. For the next match, I started off with Toxicroak to counter a possible Dark type, since he was probably trying to counter my Spiritomb in the first match. So I start off with Toxicroak. He starts off with Umbreon, which was fine by me. I predicted him. Here he switches into his Satu. I immediately saw him switching, so yeah, I predicted him using switching into his Psychic types. Perfectly switched, but yeah, see how it goes. He does his Aerial Ace, which I block since I didn't want to take that. I tried to finish him off, yeah, and I succeed there without doing a charge move. In comes his Umbreon. I do an Omnius Wind instead of a Shadow Ball, just trying to get a buff. I didn't get it, but yeah, because I did an Omnius Wind instead of a Shadow Ball, I get to my next Omnius Wind before he gets off a charge move. And here he does his charge move. I just take it. I didn't need my Spiritomb anyway, so yeah. Coming in my Toxicroak, which wasn't the right choice, I think. Should have gone with my Eradicate, since I didn't knew what his third Pokemon was, and he didn't show his Toxicroak yet. But yeah, this was my mistake, I guess. Here he switches into his Toxicroak. I nearly switched into my Eradicate myself to counter his switch, but luckily I did not. But yeah, he does hit Mud Bomb before me, which was bad since we both had 1 shields, and his Mud Bomb will hit mine earlier. Or I didn't even get to my Mud Bomb, so yeah, in comes my Eradicate against his Toxicroak. I try my best to get to in crunch to finish him off, but no, the Sludge Bomb does too much damage and he finishes me off before I get to my crunch. So GG, and we'll see him in game 3. Since he didn't lead with Toxicroak once, and I still thought he might bring his Raichu or another Psychic type in the beginning as a lead, I started off with Eradicate this time, since it disappointed me that much in game 2. So we start off with a lone Eradicate against Umbreon, which was fine by me. We play it out, and I go for my Hyper Fang since I don't think he will shield my first charge move, and it does quite a lot of damage. So coming in game 3, I thought he might not have Last Resort since he didn't use it once thus far, and that's probably why he switched then. So he switches. I guess he will switch into his Toxicroak, but no, he switches into Satu, tricking me, and I switch into my Hypno, which I switched in for my Spiritomb. So yeah, that was quite unfortunate. So I do my best. I do 1 Shadow Ball and don't shield my Hypno at all. So here I let it faint against his Satu since it's worthless against Satu. Satu will always come up top. So here I just tried to farm this Satu for some energy and shield his incoming charge moves. So I do feint him at the end. I guess he might switch into Toxicroak, that's why I farm so much energy. I do 2 Hyper Fangs to feint it, but he shields 1 of my Hyper Fangs, so yeah, none of that. Then I immediately switch after my second Hyper Fang into my Toxicroak, so my Eradicate doesn't get slapped with some counters and just feint. So here he comes in with Umbreon. I don't shield his foul play. I do my Mud Bomb to finish it off. Then we get to the mirror match again. I get to my Mud Bomb before him. I mean, it doesn't matter, I still had a shield, so yeah, GG's. For my second opponent, I used the same lineup as before in game 1 and 2. So it was Spiritomb, Alone Eradicate and Toxicroak. This time I lead off with Eradicate, still predicting an Alone Raichu lead from my opponent. So let's see what happens. I was right. He starts off with Raichu, he immediately switched without even doing any fast moves. So I immediately switch into my fighting type counters in my Spiritomb, but I just get hit by the Shadow Ball. I mean, that was my fault. I thought he might shield bait me, but no, he did not. So I now switch into my Toxicroak, hitting him for so much that just the damage of counter feints his Lucario. He then proceeds to switch into his right shoe probably. He's waiting. Well, he did not. Okay. I did do my mud bomb. And he shields it. We continue to fight it out, counter him for quite some damage, and I did my second mud bomb, which he did not shield. This time he does a charge move. I mean, it was an acid spray, but it didn't really, I don't know, I wouldn't say it didn't matter, but I still would have shielded that without it being acid spray, since I needed my Toxicroak to mud bomb his Raichu to one-shot him. I mean, it didn't need it, I still had Eradicate in the back, but it was easier this way. So here I don't shield my acid sprayed Toxicroak with 1 HP. So I finish him off with some fast moves from Eradicate and win this match. So for game 2, I guess he would go for his Lucario as a lead to counter my Eradicate. So I start off with my Toxicroak and facing his Lucario, which was very good. I do some counters, he immediately switches, I switch into my Spiritomb immediately to not get hit by any psychic moves. He does one charge move there. It was either Dazzling Gleam or Shadow Ball and didn't want to take neither. So I shield my Spiritomb. Now I have a fully stacked Spiritomb with energy, and I do an Omnius Wind just to shield bait him or get a buff. I did not get a buff, so this time I go for my more damaging move, Shadow Ball, and show him how much that hurt. And now that he saw the damage of Shadow Ball, I don't know, he maybe shield the next one. So he acid sprays me. I don't know, I didn't want to shield my Spiritomb anyways. I did want it to die, but yeah, I do an Omnius Wind here to shield bait him, and he does bite and shield his Muk. That was so good. In a bad matchup I forced the shield out of him, and now he has to fight this match without shields. So here I switch into my Toxicroak just to farm up some energy for his last Pokemon, his Lucario. And yeah, that's GG. For the next opponent I used the exact same lineup again. Spiritomb, Toxicroak and Alolan Eradicate. Started off with Spiritomb this time. Again, expecting him to lead off with Alolan Raichu. So we start off with Spiritomb against Raichu, which I predicted this time correctly. So he does some fast moves, then switches into his Toxicroak. I was thinking about a switch, but my Spiritomb was intended to counter fighting type, so I did my Omnius Wind to see if he would shield, and he did. So I tanked his Mud Bomb and aimed for a Shadow Ball, which he probably wouldn't shield since he already used one and didn't expect Shadow Ball to feint him here, but it did. So in comes his Hypno, which was strange for me, and I knew that he only had 2 Psychic types left, and I immediately switched into my Eradicate after an Omnius Wind to not waste any time. Here I use one of my 2 remaining shields to shield a possible Focus Blast, which would have ruined my Eradicate, but it ended up being Shadow Ball, but better play it safe, and yeah, at the end I just crunched them both and win this game. For For the next game, I just used the same lineup and with the same lead as well, since he didn't had good answer to my Spirit Tomb besides Absol or Sneasel, which aren't that meta, and I thought he might not be confident with those. So we start off with Spirit Tomb against Lucario, which was fine by me. I just had to shield the Shadow Ball. So he does one charge move before me. I shield that, thinking of Shadow Ball, but it was just a power-up punch. So I throw off an Omnious Wind to shield bait him, or rather trying to feint him, since Lucario is that fragile. But yeah, he gets to another charge move. I'm predicting a power punch, which I let through, and I was correct, but I did not expect that much damage, and I didn't even get to my Shadow Ball, which was quite unfortunate. I should have gone for Omnious Wind there anyways. So I switch in my Toxicroak to counter him, but he gets off a charge move at 1 HP. I am thinking of a power punch, but it ended up being a Shadow Ball, which feinted my Toxicroak there, and my Raticate comes in and gets 2 counters and is at 80% of HP. But yeah, in comes his Absol. We both have 1 shield. He gets a Mega Horn before me, before my Hyper Fang gets off, so I knew I didn't had enough time for a second Hyper Fang, especially if he shields this. So I go for my Crunch, since he is so low. Crunch will be able to feint him anyways, and Absol is also very squishy, so yeah, it does feint him. And his last Pokemon was in Hypno, which was very fortunate for me. I just had to be aware that I have to crunch him twice to feint his Hypno before he gets off in Focus Blast, and I was betting on it. So yeah, he did get off another charge move before my crunch, but it ended up being just Shadow Ball, so it was quite fortunate for me. And at the end, he told me that he didn't even had Focus Blast on his Hypno, so yeah, it could have mattered there. So GG's. For my last opponent, I did not use my usual lineup, since he had an Alone Raticate. I couldn't bring my Spirit Tomb. I wasn't confident enough, since Raticate just destroys Spirit Tombs. So my lineup was Toxicroak, Xatu and Drapion. So we start off with a Toxicroak mirror match, and I have to say that this game I had CMP, charge move priority. That means that if both players are about to do a charge move at the same time, the one with the CMP gets off his charge moves first at all times in the one game. So I had this match up in the bag pretty much. So he shields my Mud Bomb, I shield his Mud Bomb, and this time he does not shield, since he knew he couldn't win this, which was the correct play. So I defeat his Toxicroak. In comes his Psychic type Gladle, and I let my Toxicroak feint, since I didn't want to waste my switch. So here I switch in my Xatu, since his Toxicroak already feinted. My Xatu didn't have any other purpose besides defeating his Psychic type. I guessed at this point that he still had Dark type in his bag, so yeah, that's why I chose Xatu there. I let his one Gyro Ball through, since Xatu can take that, and I get to my second Omnious Wind before he gets off another charge move, and it did not feint him, and he does his charge move now. I also didn't shield that, Since my Sato was already that low and my Trepion could farm some energy against this Claydol for the next match, and I'd rather have that last shield for my Trepion against his dark type. So with Shift-3 as his last dark type, this was pretty much won with one remaining shield for me, since my infestation does so much damage because it's double effective against Shift-3, and that's GG for me then for game 1. So for the second game I did not change anything, not even my lead. I started off with Toxicroak again. Finally he did neither. So we face each other again in a mirror match, and this time he has CMP, so I had this in my mind at all times that I would lose this matchup. So I switched before I even throw off my Mud Bomb to get some damage in. He immediately switches into his Alone Eradicate after some air slashes. I do my areas to do my damage on his Alone Eradicate. He let one through and goes for a crunch, which I shield since he was so low, and I thought to myself I could feint this Eradicate before he even gets to another charge move. But now looking back, I think I should have let that crunch through and farm that Eradicate, the remaining Eradicate, with my Toxicroak for some energy. Now he has one remaining shield and I did not. Here I expected the Psychic type, but well, it was just his Toxicroak. I do my Mud Bomb, but it wasn't enough. He still had a shield which he used and Mud Bombs me back, and since I have no shield I lose this match because of a bad lead and because of CMP, but that's how it goes in Pokemon PvP. So I don't have the footage of the third match since I deleted it right after the match because it ended up being a quite buggy match for me, and in the end I did not get my charge moves off, which would have mattered there, and he kindly offered me a rematch, which he didn't have to, but he did. So yeah, very cool guy, and I would happily face him again in another tournament. So shoutouts to him. So this is pretty much the rematch, the fourth match, but with the same leads. So I did had a quite positive lead with my Satu against his Claydol, and I throw off one of my Omnius win in my rematch battle. So here I even said that if I get a boost we could play it out again, so do another rematch, but he insisted to just play it out since it was a rematch. And yeah, like the third match I did not shield his Gyro Ball, his first Gyro Ball, and did my Omnius Wind, which he shields, which was fine by me. And this time I shield his Gyro Ball, since even with the boost it would damage my Satu quite a bit. Satu is just too fragile. So I do my third Omnius Wind, which he couldn't shield anymore. So in comes his Eradicate, and I do my last aerial ace to do as much damage as I can with my Satu, which did quite a bunch, but I end up fainting before fainting his Eradicate, which was fine. And I switch in my Toxicroak and shield one of his Hyper Fangs now, which in the end I think was the right choice. So we both have no shields. My Toxicroak had even enough energy for Mud Bomb, but I switch anticipating his Mud Bomb and thinking I was clever by switching into my Drapion to soak his Mud Bomb, which ended up being bad, just bad. Since first of all I had CMP, second I had more energy than his Toxicroak and would have gotten my Mud Bomb earlier. So yeah, that was just dumb by me. So here I eat that Mud Bomb, even survive with 1 HP and get off my own Mud Bomb, but he still had an Eradicate in his bag and we faint at the same time. So for the fourth match we tied, which was fine by me since I felt so bad for that rematch, because he didn't have to offer me a rematch. And for the final game I start off with Toxicroak again, since I thought to myself he might go with a lone Eradicate this time to counter my Satu first of all, and second of all Toxicroak was also a good pick since this time I had CMP, and this way I could also win the Toxicroak matchup. And the third reasoning was because he did not start with Dark type yet. So my Toxicroak was facing Eradicate as a lead, which I was very happy about. So I anticipated his switch and switched immediately after him into my Eradicate, without knowing but expecting a Psychic type. So it ended up being Claydol, which was good. I did not goof there. I do my crunch to do quite some damage, but Claydol is pretty tanky and it needs 2 crunches to feint it. So here he does his Earth Power. I knew that Eradicate could tank some of those, even the second one. So here his Claydol was already that low. I didn't want to waste any energy, I wanted to save it for the next Pokemon, probably a Toxicroak, to feint it with 2 Hyper Fangs or waste his shields. So here I spammed my charge moves like crazy before he one-hit KOs me with 1 counter, but he did a clever switch here. Instead of Toxicroak he switched in his Eradicate and soaks my charge moves damage. This way I switch into my Toxicroak, which he predicts, and he switches before I could fade it, but I immediately switch after him since I knew he would come with Toxicroak. So this way he comes in and he did his last charge move. I didn't even shield that since I didn't needed it anyways. I rather had my shield, and my Toxicroak was fine by himself with shields against both of his Pokemon. So yeah, here in comes my Toxicroak, feint his Toxicroak without him doing another Mud Bomb, and with the remaining energy I just Mud Bomb his Eradicate, and this way I won my tournament.